Hello, hi everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Dr. Yusnita Md Yunus from School of Educational Studies, also known as Pusat Pengajian Ilmu Pendidikan, Universiti Sains Malaysia. Today in this video, I'll be sharing with you From Data to Discovery, applying Braun and Clarke's 2006 thematic analysis in qualitative research. In this video, I will be sharing with you thematic analysis and its application in qualitative research. We will explore the 6 key steps of thematic analysis as developed by Braun and Clarke in 2006. This structured approach will provide you with a clear and systematic method for analyzing qualitative data, helping you uncover meaningful patterns and insights within your research. Let's go through the objectives of this video sharing. First, to introduce and explain the fundamentals of thematic analysis, particularly the approach developed by Braun and Clarke in 2006, and how it can be applied in qualitative research to systematically identify themes and patterns. Second, to guide participants through the 6-step process of thematic analysis, providing practical examples and demonstrating how each step contributes to a comprehensive understanding of qualitative data. And the third objective is to equip participants with the skills to apply thematic analysis in their own research, enabling them to analyze complex qualitative data and uncover meaningful insights. Before we discuss thematic analysis further, I would like to introduce the key figures behind this method. The individuals shown in the slides are Professor Virginia Braun and Associate Professor Victoria Clarke. Together, they have shaped how qualitative researchers approach and interpret complex data sets, making them accessible across various fields. Their work has guided countless researchers in applying a structured yet flexible approach to data analysis, allowing for identifying patterns and themes within qualitative data. We will be referring to their model throughout this presentation. As we begin, let's define thematic analysis. Thematic analysis is one of the most widely used qualitative analysis methods. It allows researchers to systematically identify, organize, and offer insights into patterns of meaning or theme across a dataset. The method became especially popular after Braun and Clarke published their influential paper on thematic analysis in psychology in 2006. Since then, their work has been cited over 214,392 times, a testament to the method's widespread application and relevance across various fields, not just psychology. A key reason for thematic analysis' popularity is its flexibility. It offers a clear, structured method for researchers to follow, but also provides room for interpretations and adaptation depending on the research context. Because of its versatility, thematic analysis has gained recognition in many other disciplines beyond psychology. So, whether you are conducting research in education, health, or social sciences, thematic analysis provides a robust framework for analyzing qualitative data, helping researchers make sense of complex information. So why is thematic analysis such a popular choice for researchers? First, It represents a specific method, meaning a clear and structured approach exists for its execution. This is important because it provides researchers with reliable and systematic ways to analyze qualitative data. Second, the steps for conducting thematic analysis have been clearly and explicitly defined. This makes it accessible for researchers at various levels, whether you are new to qualitative research or more experienced. Third, thematic analysis offers flexibility, which is essential for qualitative approaches. Researchers can adapt it to suit their specific research needs without being confined to rigid structures. This flexibility allows thematic analysis to work across various disciplines and research contexts. And finally, the method has evolved very little since 2006 when Braun and Clarke first introduced it. This means their original guidelines remain highly relevant and applicable even today, ensuring the method remains robust and reliable. A theme in thematic analysis is essentially a summary of the content or a central concept that encapsulates the meaning of similar pieces of data. It helps us to understand and interpret patterns within the data. Themes are not just found, they must be generated by you, the researcher. You will actively identify and construct themes based on your analysis. For example, you might hear or read phrases like five themes were identified or five themes were developed. Both phrases are commonly used in qualitative research but carry slightly different connotations. Continuing from the previous slide, the phrases five themes were identified and five themes were developed may sound similar, but they carry slightly different connotations. When we say five themes were identified, it suggests a more passive process. This phrase implies that the themes were already present within the data, and the researcher simply uncovered or recognized them during the analysis. It's as though the themes were waiting to be found within the data set. On the other hand, the phrase five themes were developed suggests a more active role for the researcher. This indicates that the researcher constructs or builds the themes based on their analysis. In this case, the themes were not merely found but created as part of the interpretative process. Both approaches are valid, but it's important to recognize the difference. Identifying themes reflects a more observational role, while developing themes highlights the researcher's active engagement in shaping the meaning of the data. Before we move forward, let's take a moment to look at the sample transcript. This is an example of how a teacher reflects on their experience after adopting a new student-centered teaching method. Can you describe your experience using the new student-centered teaching method in your classroom? Teacher A: Initially, I was a bit skeptical about changing my teaching style. I had been teaching in the traditional way for years, so it felt uncomfortable to give up some of that control in the classroom. I worried that the student wouldn't be as focused or wouldn't take responsibility for their own learning. The method required a lot of students' participation, and I had to rethink how I assess student learning. After a few weeks, students were becoming more engaged. They started asking more questions and discussing ideas with each other. One of my quietest students, who rarely participated before, took the lead in her group, which was something I had not expected. Time management was a big issue during group work. and I had to find ways to keep students on track while still allowing them to have autonomy over their learning. Reflecting on it now, I realized that while I was initially hesitant, the change has been positive overall. The students are more active in their learning, and I have learned to adapt my strategies to better support their engagement. The first step in thematic analysis is familiarization with the data. This step is crucial because it's where you immerse yourself in the data set to deeply understand the content. The objective is to become fully acquainted with the data by reading and rereading the transcripts or listening to audio recordings. As you go through this process, it's important to take note of any initial observation or potential patterns that stand out to you. The process involves transcribing any verbal data if necessary and then reading through the data multiple times. This allows you to start seeing patterns or themes emerge naturally. As you do this, jot down any initial thoughts or ideas that might inform your later analysis. By thoroughly familiarizing yourself with the data, you will have a solid foundation to move forward with coding and theme generation in the subsequent steps. So, how to familiarize with the data? Read the transcript carefully and familiarize yourself with the teacher's experiences and reflections. Highlight or underline key phrases or sentences that stand out to you as important, and jot down initial thoughts or observation about the teacher's experience with the new teaching method. Step 2 in thematic analysis is generating initial codes. The objective here is to start systematically coding the data by identifying and labeling relevant features that are interesting or significant in relation to your research question. Coding allows us to break down the data into smaller, manageable pieces and begin the process of analysis. The process involves working through the entire data set, whether it's interview transcripts, focus group discussion, or any other qualitative data. Organizing it into meaningful groups using codes. These codes are the smallest units of analysis, and they help you categorize the data based on patterns or repeated ideas that emerge. For example, you might code segments of the data as student engagement or teacher adaptation, depending on what stands out in the data. Once these codes are generated, they form the foundation for identifying broader themes later in the analysis. So, how to read the transcript thoroughly? Reread the interview transcript provided earlier. As you read, focus on understanding the teacher's experiences, challenges, and reflections regarding the new teaching method. So the goal is to ensure you are fully familiar with the content before you begin coding. How to identify significant segments. As you go through the transcript, identify and underline or highlight segments, such as sentences or phrases that seem significant or interesting. These might relate to emotions, challenges, successes, or specific actions the teacher took. How to label with initial codes. For each significant segment you have highlighted, create a short descriptive label or code that captures the essence of that segment. Write these codes in the margin or in a separate document. How to organize the codes? After coding the entire transcript, review all the codes you have created. Group similar codes together. This will help in identifying potential themes later. How to review and refine codes? Go through your codes and groups again. Make sure that each code accurately reflects the data segment it labels. Consider whether any code needs to be split into more specific labels or merged for simplicity. And how to document the coding process? Document your coding process, noting any decision you made and why you grouped certain codes together. This will be important for transparency in your research process. So the goal is to ensure you have a clear record of how you arrive at your codes and what they represent. Here we have an example output that demonstrates how segments from the data are coded into initial codes. On the left side, we see various data segments. These are direct quotes from a teacher reflecting on their experience with a new teaching method. On the right side, we have the corresponding initial quotes that capture the essence of each segment. Once you have coded the data, the next step is to group similar quotes together. In this example, we have grouped the quotes into two broader categories: teacher challenges and positive outcomes. By organizing the data into these grouped codes, you begin to see the patterns and relationships that can eventually lead to development of overarching themes. Step 3 in thematic analysis is searching for themes. The objective at this stage is to examine the codes you have created and begin identifying themes, which are broader patterns of meaning that address your research question. Themes are developed by collating related codes and gathering all the data relevant to each theme. The process involves reviewing the different codes you generated in the previous step and considering how they may combine or relate to overarching themes. This step helps you move from a detailed set of codes to higher levels concepts that capture the essence of what happenings in your data. How to review the initial codes? Start by reviewing the list of initial codes you created in the previous step. Take a moment to understand each code and its relevance to the data. How to look for patterns and relationships. Examine the codes and think about how they relate to one another. Look for patterns, similarities, or connections between the codes. Consider whether some codes could be grouped together under a broader concept. Okay, let's look at how to group codes into potential themes. Begin grouping the codes into broader potential themes. Each theme should represent a significant and coherent pattern in the data. Write down the potential themes and list the codes that belong to each. How to refine the themes. Review the potential themes you have identified. Ensure each theme is distinct and that the codes grouped under it fit well together. If necessary, merge similar themes or split broad themes into more specific ones. How to present the themes. Present the themes you have developed to the class or group. Explain how you arrive at each theme, the quotes it includes, and why these themes are significant in the context of the research. Here, we see an example of the final thematic analysis, which shows how themes are derived from the quotes and supported by specific data segments. On the left, we have the themes that have emerged from our coding process. These are the higher level concepts that encapsulate broader patterns in the data. For example, teacher adaptation. This theme includes codes such as skepticism about change, adapting to new methods, and reassessing assessment methods. These codes captured the challenges and adjustment the teacher experienced. Students' empowerment, this theme includes quotes like increased student engagement and student leadership, reflecting the positive outcomes for students using the new teaching method. Classroom dynamics, these themes includes quotes related to time management challenges, highlighting the logistical difficulties in adapting to a new approach. On the right side, we have the supporting data segment that correspond to each theme. These are direct quotes from the transcript that provide evidence for the quotes and themes. For example, initially I was a bit skeptical and the method required a lot of students' participation, support the teacher adaptation theme. By grouping quotes into themes and supporting them with data segments, we can present a clear, organized analysis that reflects the key findings of the research. Step 4, intermittent analysis is reviewing themes. The objective of this stage is to refine the themes to ensure they accurately represent the data and are distinct from each other. This involves not just looking at the themes themselves, but also reviewing the data that supports them. It is essential to ensure that each theme captures something meaningful in relation to your research question and they don't overlap too much with other themes. And the process requires you to check if the themes work in relation to the coded data and the entire data set. As you review, you may find that some themes need to be split into smaller, more specific themes, while others might need to be merged if they overlap significantly. You may even decide to discard some themes if they don't add value to your overall analysis. This refining process ensures that your final themes are clear, coherent, and accurately reflect the patterns within your data. How to present the themes. Begin by reviewing each theme you have developed in the previous step. For each theme, ask yourself the following questions. Does this theme accurately reflect the data it represents? Are these codes grouped under this theme consistent and related? Does this theme overlap with another theme or is it distinct? So let's look at how to check for overlapping themes. Identify if any themes overlap in meaning or content. If two themes cover similar ground, consider merging them into a single theme or splitting them into more specific subthemes. And how to evaluate the support for each theme? Look at the data segments or codes supporting each theme. Ensure that each theme is well supported by the data. If a theme has weak support or if the data doesn't quite fit, you might need to reconsider or refine it. You can look at the example given. Regarding refine or redefine themes, based on your review, refine each theme to better reflect the data. This might involve splitting a broad theme into smaller, more specific themes, merging similar themes that overlapped in meaning, discarding themes that don't fit well with the overall analysis and are not well supported by the data. How to reassess the entire data set. Reassess your refined themes in relation to the entire data set. Ensure that the themes collectively cover all the significant patterns in the data without redundancy. Adjust the themes as necessary to capture the full scope of the data. Okay, let's look at how to document the refinement process. Write a brief reflection the changes you made during this step. Explain why certain themes were merged, split, or discarded, and how the final themes better represent the data. So the goal, this documentation will help you track your analytical process and justify your final thematic structure. Here is an example of refined themes after reviewing the initial themes from step 4. This refinement process helps ensure that the themes accurately capture the data and are distinct from one another. The first refined theme is initial resistance. This was split from the broader theme of teacher adaptation to specifically highlight the teacher's initial skepticism about changing their teaching style. The supporting data segment includes quotes like, "Initially, I was a bit skeptical about changing my teaching style." The second refined theme is adapting strategies. This was also split from teacher adaptation to focus more on the process of adapting to the new teaching method. Supporting data here includes the method required a lot of student participation, and I had to rethink how I assess student learning. The third refined theme is student empowerment. In this case, we merge it with student engagement to create a broader, more inclusive theme. The supporting data segments highlight this with quotes such as, "Students were becoming more engaged," and "One of my quieter students took the lead in her group." This refinement process is crucial in ensuring that each theme is specific, clear, and well supported by the data. It also helps to eliminate overlap and improve the clarity of your analysis. Step 5 in thematic analysis is defining and naming themes. The objective here is to clearly define what each theme is about, the essence of what each theme captures, and how it fits into the overall story of the analysis. Assign a concise and informative name to each theme. The process, write detailed analysis of each theme, identifying its scopes and focus. How to review the refined themes. Begin by reviewing the refined themes you have developed in the previous steps. Ensure you understand the key idea or pattern that each theme represents. So the goal is to prepare for the next step where you will define and name each theme clearly. How to write a definition for each theme. For each theme, write a brief definition that captures its essence. The definition should explain what the theme is about, how it relates to the research questions, and what specific aspect of the data it reflects. How to create a descriptive name for each theme. Create a name for each theme that is both descriptive and succinct. The name should clearly convey the essence of the theme in just a few words. Look at the example. How to test the clarity of definitions and names. Share your theme's names and definitions with a peer or group. Ask them if the names and definitions make sense without additional explanation. If they find any name or definition unclear, consider revising it for clarity. The goal is to ensure that the theme names and definitions are easily understood by others, not just by those who created them. How to refine the theme names and definitions. Based on the feedback you receive, refine the theme's names and definitions. Make sure each name is concise yet descriptive, and each definition is clear, specific, and directly related to the data. Now let's look at how to document the final theme names and definitions. Document your final theme names and definitions. Include any notes about why certain names were chosen or how definitions were refined. So this documentation will be useful for explaining your thematic analysis process in your final report or presentation. Here is an example of final named and defined themes after completing the refinement process in step 5. The first theme is initial resistance. This theme represents the teacher's initial hesitation and skepticism toward adopting the new teaching method. It includes feelings of doubt, fear of change, and the challenges they face during the early stages of implementation. This theme helps to capture the emotional and practical difficulties that teachers often experience when trying something new. The second theme is adapting classroom strategies. This theme focuses on the teacher's process of modifying classroom strategies to better implement the new teaching method. It includes trial and error efforts and adjustment to teaching techniques. This highlights the active role the teacher took in making the method work for their students. The third theme is student empowerment. This theme reflects the positive impact of the new teaching method on student engagement and leadership. It highlights moments where students took on more active roles in the classroom, showing how the new approach encouraged students to take more ownership of their learning. By clearly defining each theme, we ensure that they are distinct, informative, and reflective of the data. This helps create a coherent narrative that aligns with the research questions. Now we have come to the final step in thematic analysis, which is step number 6, writing the report. The objective here is to produce a coherent narrative that presents your themes in a way that convincingly answers the research questions. The report should not only describe the themes but also provide analysis and interpretation, showing how each theme contributes to the overall understanding of the data. The process involves writing up your findings, weaving together the themes and supporting data extracts to tell the story of your data. This means that for each theme, you will include codes or data segments that exemplify the theme, followed by an analysis that explain why this theme is important and how it answers the research question. It's essential to provide evidence to support your analysis, linking the data back to the research objectives. The final report should present a well-rounded evidence-based interpretations of the data that gives insight into the research question. How to review the themes and supporting data. Start by reviewing the final themes you have defined and named in the previous steps. Ensure you have a clear understanding of each theme and the data segments that support it. Be ready to present these themes in a cohesive narrative and tells the story of your analysis. So how to outline the structure of your report? Create an outline for your report. A typical structure might include this: introduction, methodology, findings, discussions, and conclusion. How to write the introduction and methodology sections. Begin by writing the introduction section, provide background on the research topic, and clearly state the research questions. Then write the methodology section, describing how you conducted your thematic analysis, including steps like data collection, coding, theme development, and theme refinement. Here's the examples. How to present the themes in the findings section. Write the findings section where you present each theme. And for each theme, Introduce the theme by name and provide its definition. Explain the theme by discussing the key ideas it represents and how it relates to the research questions. Support the themes with data excerpts or quotes from the transcript that illustrate the theme. This is an example of theme 1, initial resistance. How to interpret the findings in the discussion section. Write the discussion section where you interpret the themes in relation to the research questions and broader context. Discuss how the themes provide insights into the research topic and what implications they have. How to summarize in the conclusion sections. Write the conclusion sections, summarizing the key findings and their implications. Mention any limitations of the study and suggest directions for future research or practical applications. How to revise and proofread the report. After completing the first draft of your report, revise it for clarity, coherence, and consistency. Ensure that your argument flows logically from one section to the next. Proofread for grammar, spelling, and formatting errors. What is the goal? A polished final report that clearly communicates your analysis and findings. With that recap of thematic analysis and its 6 steps, we have reached the conclusion of this section. I sincerely thank you for your attention and participation throughout this exploration of thematic analysis. Embark on a journey from data to discovery. Let's learn and grow together.